Okay, and this is the video for the question pack for aggregate demand questions, which comes up on the paper 3, which is a higher level paper. Okay, so the first question here gives us all this table of data, and it says calculate gross domestic product GDP for country X in 2015. Right, well, how do you calculate GDP? Well, by the expenditure approach, you calculate GDP by adding together all the spending that happens on consumption spending on domestically produced goods, plus investment spending, plus government spending, plus exports minus imports. And we take away imports because imports represent that fraction or that portion of national income which is not spent on domestically produced goods. Now again, just to be clear, for future reference, X minus M is the balance of trade, okay? So in order to calculate GDP, what we have to do here is we have to find consumption spending. Well, we're given all this table here, and we see consumption spending is 745. So write down 745 plus, where's the investment spending? Well, investment spending is here, which is 229, okay, plus 229. Where's the government spending? Well, government spending on goods and services, so there's no transfer payments included, which is 437, okay, plus export spending, there's imports, here's exports, which is 234, plus 234, and then we have to take away imports, which is minus 289. Okay, so what we then do is we simply get out our calculator, but I've got all my answers prepared from earlier, and I'm going to add up all of these plus numbers. So I get, no I don't, I'm actually going to use my calculator now just for this one. So it's 745 plus 229 plus 437 plus 234 equals 1645. So we've got 1645, brilliant, minus 289, so take away 289, and I'll just put this here so you can see it, and that equals 1356. So GDP equals 1356. Now the question is, am I done? And the answer is no, because I need to write in the currency symbol and the amount that it is, because in the question it says that they're all in billions. Okay, so that's the first thing done. Now the next question coming down here, and just forgive me while I get my papers together. Okay, so the next question coming down here says calculate gross national income, or GNI, can also be referred to as GNP, gross national product, but it says calculate gross national income for country X in 2015. Well, the first thing I need you to see is what gross national income is. It's GDP, and it's either plus or minus net factor income from abroad. The net factor income from abroad is all the money that has been sent into the country minus all the money that has been sent out of the country. Okay, so that's essentially what it is. It's not a perfect definition, but for us right now it'll do. Now, just to be clear again, you add it if it's a positive, if more money has been sent into the country than has been sent out, or you take it away if it's a negative, which means that there's less money has been sent into the country than has been sent out. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is going to write GNI, gross national income, equals GDP, and as we've already calculated that, that's $1356 billion. So I don't need to write 1356. I don't need to write in the billion or the dollars while I'm doing the calculations. And we have net factor income here, which is minus number of 111. Okay, so that's going to be minus 111. So we have GNI equals, and just simply taking them away, 1, 2, 4, 5. And again, just to be annoying, am I done? No, I'm not done. I have to put the currency figure and the amount that it is. Okay, now the next question here says, we're given this table, and it says calculate the rate of consumer price inflation. Okay, well, the way that we can do that, well, we have a number of ways that we can do that, okay, but we're going to use the CPI for this because it says consumer price inflation. All right, so the CPI here is these numbers, and what they try to do is give you a way to deflate, or to to remove the effects of price increases of nominal GDP. Okay, so the way we do this, now we don't have to do that yet, but the way that we do this is the formula for calculating inflation using CPI, or the consumer price inflation, is CPI in 1 year minus the CPI in the year before over the CPI in the year before multiplied by 100 over 1. Well, that mightn't make a huge amount of sense yet, but say it's in 2016, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to write down inflation, okay, for 2016 equals, well, what's the inflation in 2016? Well, the CPI in 2016 is 109.21. Okay, and then I have to take away the CPI from the year before, and that's 105.35, and then I have to divide it by the CPI in the year before, which is 2015, and that's 105.35, and then we multiply all that by 100 over 1. Okay, well, what that gives us then, if I take 105.35 away from 109.21, what I get then is 3.86, I believe, 3.86 over the same thing, 105.35, and I'm still multiplying it by 100 over 1. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the two fractions, so top by top, bottom by bottom. So what that equals here is 3.86 by 100 is simply 386. You move the decimal point 2 places to the right. It's still over the top because 1 by anything is still itself, so that's still over. It's still over the bottom, excuse me, which is 105.35. And what that equals is 3.66%. Okay, so you're going to work it out to 3 places of decimals, and then what you're going to do is just put it to 2 places of decimals as your answer. Okay, now the next question here says, using the GDP deflator this time, which is another way to calculate the rate of inflation, it says calculate the percentage change in real GDP. So what we have to do, we have to calculate real GDP in the 2 years, and it says between 2014 and 2015. Now this is a little bit of a cheat, because if we look up here and we see the GDP deflator is 100, so whenever you see either the consumer price index or the GDP deflator, what you've actually got there being 100, that means all prices are being compared to the prices that existed in that year. So you don't need to work out anything, because nominal GDP and real GDP are always the same when whatever deflator we're using, either the CPI or the GDP deflator, is 100. So real equals nominal when the GDP deflator is 100 or the CPI is 100. Okay, so we don't need to calculate, because real is the same as nominal when the deflators, the measures of inflation, are the indices that are used to measure inflation, like the GDP deflator or the consumer price index, are 100. So what we do need to work out, however, is the real GDP for 2015. Well, the way you calculate real GDP is nominal GDP divided by the GDP deflator for that year multiplied by 100 over 1. Well, nominal GDP in 2015 is 4814. Okay, so I'm going to write down here 4814. I'm going to divide it by the GDP deflator in 2015, which is 105.11, and then I'm going to multiply it by 100 over 1. You'll see that always come up, I suppose. Okay? Now, so what we then do is top by top, bottom by bottom. I've got 481400, because I'm just multiplying by 100, over, well, again, multiplying by 1 is the same thing. Okay, 105.11, and what I get here is 4579.96 rounded to 2 places of decimals. Okay, now the second thing is, it says, well, that's not the answer, because in order to calculate real GDP growth, we needed to know real GDP in both years. Okay, so we knew from the question, because again the indices were 100, that's real GDP as well as nominal GDP. They're always the same when the indices are 100. Okay, now we've calculated what real GDP is, which is simply trying to measure the increase. What real GDP growth is trying to measure the increase as a percentage of the amount of output that was produced between 2 years, and we don't want increases in prices, otherwise known as inflation, to influence our answers. So that's why we need to find real GDP, because what real GDP tries to do is remove the effects of inflation from increasing that number. We only want changes in output to increase that number. Okay, so real GDP growth, like kind of the indices up here, the inflation, is real GDP in year 2 minus real GDP in year 1 divided by real GDP in year 1 multiplied by 100 over 1. So what we've got here is, I'm just going to write real GDP, and I'm just going to write growth equals. Real GDP in year 2 is this that we've worked out, because year 2 is 2015. So it's 4579.96 minus real GDP in year 1, which is this here, 4465 over real GDP in year 1, which is 4465 multiplied by 100 over 1. Okay, well, what that actually equals then, if I take this from this, I get 114.96, 114.96. Obviously, I've worked all this stuff out before, over 4465, still multiplied by 100 over 1. So top by top, bottom by bottom, I've got equals 11496, 2 decimal places to the right because I'm multiplying by 100, over 4465. And what I then get is I get 2.57, so 2.57% when I round it off, which is simply just 2.57. I don't know why I wrote that twice, but look, we're enjoying ourselves. Okay, so that's that done. All right. Now, the next bit is just a bit of reading. So as I have said in previous videos, what you're actually getting this is a few kind of written questions that you have to know theory. And it's, I suppose, a good idea, really. So I give extra answers and I will tell you what you need to know. So identify the term. We have a circular flow of income diagram. Identify the term represented in figure 4 by the letter V. Well, we have to find V. And V is this. This is money going from firms to households. Now, households own all of the firms. Essentially, households own all of the factors of production. Now, the only answer that you had to write down was income or income received by households. If you write down that one word, okay, you get the mark. What I said is income received by households by supplying factors of production to firms, all right? Now, that's a perfect answer, but all you had to write was income, all right? Now, the next thing it asks is identify the term represented in figure 4 by the letter M. And we have here M. We've got the foreign market or abroad here. So this is money coming into firms, okay, from exports, from foreigners buying their goods. And this is money going out of households and not into firms, essentially by imports. All you had to do was write down what imports are. But for no harm for a bit of extra revision, I suppose. This is money spent by domestic residents on goods and services produced outside the country. It is a leakage from the circular flow of income and as such reduces aggregate demand in the country. Okay, now the next thing here it asks, can you see that? Yes, you can. Forgive me, I'm checking the camera here. The next thing it asks is state 4 factor payments which constitute the income flow in the circular flow of income model. Well, there's 4 factors of production, okay? There's land, labor, capital, and enterprise. There you go, you can see all my fingers. So land, the payment that the owners of land received is called rent. The payment that the owners of labor receive, which is workers, is called wages. The payment that the owners of capital receive is called interest. And the payment that the owners of enterprise receive, the entrepreneur, is called profit. That's all you had to do. Okay, that's it done. Now, what's a leakage? A leakage represents the portion of national income which is not spent on domestic output. All right, that's what a leakage is. We're moving on again. Okay, now again, I hope what you'll see from this is you'll see a massive number of times that you're asked to calculate national income or GDP from a table, right? Now, in this, it's slightly different, all right? So it says, using the data in table 3, calculate the level of investment. Well, you need to know the expenditure approach, okay? So we need to know nominal GDP. Well, nominal GDP is 109 because we know that GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay, well, let's see if we can find consumption. Consumption is 71. We're asked to find investment, so that's what we're going to do. Whereas government spending on goods and services is 32. Just making sure I'm writing all the right numbers. Okay, exports is 12. Okay, minus or take away imports because they're a leakage, which is 15. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get all of the, I got 109. Okay, I'm going to say plus or equals, 71 plus 32 plus 12 minus 15, and then I'm moving this plus I over, plus I. Okay, then what I'm going to write down is 109 equals, if I add up all of these, right, and then take the 15 away, I get 100 plus I. Okay, then if I go 109 minus 100 equals I, bring this over the equal sign, change its sign, and I get $9 billion equals I. And that's the answer to that question. So again, we're just manipulating simple algebra, putting all the numbers together and moving everything across. But it all starts with knowing how to calculate GDP by the expenditure approach. Now, what we've got here, and yes, we can see. Okay, in country beta, investment by firms increases in the first quarter of 2019. State two possible reasons for the increase in investment by firms. Okay, well, I've listed them all. You only need to list two. Okay, an increase in business confidence. If businesses believe that the future holds greater potential for people buying their products, they will invest more now in capital to produce more sooner so that they are in a position to sell more to their customers. That's that reason. A decrease in the rate of interest. Well, interest is the cost of borrowing. Okay, so if the cost of borrowing falls, then it becomes cheaper to purchase or produce more capital goods, which is investment. So if the cost of investment falls, because most investment is funded by borrowing, and the cost of borrowing falls, well, then more investment is going to occur. An increase in access to loans or other forms of borrowing. Now, yeah, interest rates are the cost of borrowing. Okay, they're simultaneously the reward to savings, but they're the cost of borrowing from what we're talking about right now. But even if the costs stay the same and certain firms can't get access to loans in order to fund investment, which is the production or purchase of capital goods, well then, if this becomes easier for them to get access to these loans, well then investment will increase. Okay, better infrastructure. So the idea is that if it becomes easier to do business because of better roads or telecommunications, then firms will invest more in capital in order to avail of this easier time and a greater opportunity in order to sell goods and services to customers. If it becomes easier to sell goods and services to customers because of better infrastructure, well then firms will invest more in producing goods and services in order to sell to their current customers or potential ones. Now, fiscal policy is any action taken by the government to do with taxation or government spending with the view of achieving some macroeconomic objectives. Okay, so if they lower corporate tax, because again it's taxation or spending, or they give an investment taxation or spending, an investment tax credit for firms to invest, well then firms are going to find it more profitable to produce goods and services, and as such they're going to be more likely to invest in capital, which helps them produce more goods and services. So that's another reason that investment can increase. If there's higher corporate profits, well then if they're earning more money, most likely their business confidence is high, and also if they're earning more money, higher profits, they have more money to plough into the production of capital, which is what investment is from a macroeconomic point of view. And improved technology. You always find that with an improvement in technology, firms tend to want to avail of that new technology. And what is technology but a form of capital? And what is purchasing or producing capital? Well, that's investment. So if there's a new technology which helps firms do business better, not only will they want to do it to get a competitive edge on their competitors, but they'll also want this technology because they'll be afraid if they don't do it, well then, or if they don't avail of it, well then their competitors will, and they'll have an advantage over them. Okay, so they don't want to suffer that either. So basically, they're all the reasons that an increase in investment can occur. Okay, so what we've got now is calculate the real growth rate in 2018 using the figures in the table below. So again, okay, the first thing is, how do we calculate real GDP? So neither of these figures, okay, are 100. So we're going to have to do two separate calculations. Now, I've already done the first one, okay? So the first one is the real GDP for 2017. Well, how do we do that? It's nominal GDP over the GDP deflator, which is given here, multiplied by 100 over 1. So for 2017, nominal GDP is 107. The GDP deflator is 101.2. I multiply that by 100 over 1. Top by top, bottom by bottom, I get 10,700 divided by 101.2 equals 105.73. Now, the real GDP for 2018, well, what does that equal? Well, that equals nominal GDP, which is 109, over the GDP deflator. So we've actually had deflation now because the GDP deflator has gone down in 2 consecutive years, multiplied by 100 over 1, which equals 10900, just adding 2 zeros, over 99.4, and that I have equaling as 109.66 rounded to 2 decimal places. Now, the next thing I should have probably written down already, but what we've got here is real GDP growth. Real GDP growth. Okay, well, what that is, and we've already seen that before, is real GDP in the second year minus real GDP in the first year. Well, that's if it's 2 consecutive years. In the second period minus the first period over real GDP in the first period, and again multiplied by what? You guessed it, 100 over 1. Okay, so what we have now is real GDP growth. Okay, equals, well, what's real GDP in the second period? Well, that's back up here at 109.66, so it's 109.66 minus the first period, which is 105.73, 105.73, and that's all over the first period, which is 105.73, and that's multiplied by 100 over 1. Well, if I take this from this, I'm just going to make sure you can see what I'm writing here, and you can now. So I've got real GDP growth equals, and I work this out as 3.93, excuse my chicken scratch of a writing, 105.73 multiplied by 100 over 1, and I have that equaling out as 393, just moving the decimal place 2 points to the right, over 105.73. And what I have here now is the last bit to this question is real GDP growth equals, and I have this working out as 3.717, which equals as an answer equals 3.72%, because the third decimal place is 5 or above, so I round this up and that's what I get. Okay, so that's the answer to that question there. Right, now moving on. Fantastic stuff we're doing here. Okay, now the next thing is, you must forgive my writing and stuff like that. So I suppose the first thing here is we're just given a graph, and we can see that the aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. So this is the average price level as measured by the CPI or the GDP deflator. And this here is real output, real GDP. Okay, there's no prices have no effect on this. Okay, so now what we're saying here, and I've apologized for how small it is, but hopefully you can still read it. It says, explain giving 2 reasons. Now, of course, I've gone for 3, just so you know the 3 reasons why aggregate demand curve has a negative slope. Well, there are 3 reasons. Why at lower rates of inflation or lower price levels, right, do people buy more stuff? Right? Well, there's 3 reasons, okay? Remember, the government has its own objectives, so they don't really fall into this. But we have C plus C, which is consumption, I, which is investment, and X minus M, which is net exports, okay? So we need to talk about those 3 other segments, okay? Well, the first one here is the price level and consumption. So how does the price level affect the amount that households buy? And this is known as the wealth effect here, okay? Well, if the average price level increases, then real wealth decreases. Because if you're on a fixed wage and the price of everything goes up, well, now your fixed wage buys less stuff. So that would require, and I'll just come up here to show that at higher price levels, like here, okay, people would buy less than they would if the price level was down here. They would obviously buy more. Okay, because this is how much stuff people want to buy. Okay, it's the amount of real output that people want to buy. That's what aggregate demand is. It's the amount of the country's output that people want to buy, that everybody wants to buy, consumption, investment, government expenditure, and net exports at different price levels. That's what it is. Okay, so it's saying if aggregate price level rises, or the average price level rises, excuse me, then real wealth decreases, so people spend less. That's the reason, because you can't afford to buy as much as you could with your fixed income, assuming with fixed income in the short run, which we do, at higher price levels. You can't. I mean, if everything costs €1 and you have €100, you can buy 100 units of stuff. If everything costs €2 and you only have still €100, you can only buy 50 units of stuff. It's quite obvious. Okay, the price then, point number 2, the second reason why the aggregate demand curve slopes downwards is the price level and investment, which is the interest rate effect. If the average price level increases, interest rates are likely to rise. So if inflation rises, the bank wants to protect itself against inflation, so they're going to up their interest rates, discouraging investment and consumer spending. Well, why is it should be relatively obvious, I would hope, why investment is discouraged at higher rates of interest. And the reason is because most investment, the production or purchase of capital goods, is funded by borrowing, and interest rates are the cost of borrowing. So if the cost of borrowing rises, well, then less investment projects become profitable, and entrepreneurs are profit maximizers. Okay, but why would consumer spending fall? Well, at higher interest rates, the reward to saving, because that's what interest rates are, has increased. So in order to save more, consumers have to spend less. Okay, so that's the second reason. Really try and understand these reasons. And now the third reason why which you didn't have to give, the first two are fine. Okay, but the third reason why the aggregate demand curve slopes downwards is the price level and net exports. So this is called the exchange rate effect. Now, I really hope you can see this. This is meant to be a 4K camera, so I really hope you can. If the average price level increases, the economy's exports becomes less competitive, reducing the demand for exports, meaning less domestically produced goods are purchased by foreigners. Well, aggregate demand is the amount of our output, the amount of domestic output that is purchased by everybody, including foreigners. If our average price level goes up, foreigners are going to be like, nah, we're not going to buy that stuff, it's too expensive now. Okay, so that's part of it. Also, imports become relatively cheaper. And remember, imports are a leakage, okay, leading to a greater level of imports. And if you're going to buy more imports, you're going to buy less domestically produced goods, right? And who's going to buy those? By domestic citizens. So not only will foreigners buy less of our stuff, but domestic citizens will buy less of our stuff and more of foreign stuff. And again, that means that less domestic, just make sure you can see, less domestic goods and services are bought at a higher level, or at a higher price level, than they would be at a lower price level. Okay, that's all we're saying there. Now, have I done this? No, I haven't. Okay, so we're on to the next page now. And let me just have a look and make sure everything's okay so as you guys can see it. Okay, straighten it up. All right, now, surprise, surprise, what are we doing here? Well, what we're doing is the exact same thing as we always do. Okay, now, the thing is, we have GDP. Okay, calculate gross domestic product. So GDP, surprisingly, equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay, so what we're saying here is, well, what's consumption? Well, I have to find it first. 6520. So 6520. What's investment? Well, again, I have to find it. Investment is 1020. Okay, 1020. Okay, what's government expenditure? Let me find it. Government expenditure is 3300. 3300 plus exports, which is here 2295 minus imports, which is 2450. Remembering that exports minus imports is the balance of trade. Okay, so we've got GDP, and I believe from what I've done already is 10,840, which is this plus this plus this plus this, and then I'm going to go. Where did I get that from? Oh, silly me. No, I'll do it differently, and that's fine. Okay, so I've got GDP equals, see if we can see this here. Okay, so we've got 6520 plus 1020 plus 3300 plus 2295. Just making sure of my numbers. Yeah, equals 13135. Okay, so GDP equals 13135 minus 2450, and that's minus 2450, and that equals 10685, right? GDP. Now again, I'm going to be annoying. 10685. Okay, am I done? No, I'm not done, because what I have to do is put in the currency, and supposedly this is millions now. Okay, right. So again, like, there's no issue with any of this stuff, okay? You guys can do all of this. It's just once you see all the repetition, and okay, maybe the first time you watch the video, it's, you know, like, you're like, oh, I didn't know how to do that or whatever. But afterwards, you should be absolutely sorted, okay? So I better keep this sheet here, right? So then the next question is, the population of country Z, which is what we were just looking at here, Okay, what we've just worked out, the population of country Z is 420,000. Calculate GDP per capita for country Z in 2012. Okay, right. Well, GDP per capita is the GDP which we've just worked out over the population. Now, if you'll forgive me, what's the GDP? Okay, well, it's 10,685 million. So what I'm actually going to write down now is I'm going to write down here 10,685. And I'm actually just going to put in the 6 zeros after that, just to make it kind of easy and obvious. And then divided by the population, which we're already told in the question, is 420,000. Now, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out my calculator, but here's one I've prepared earlier. And I've got this. Now, again, just to be annoying, that's the dollar sign. And when you divide the top line by the bottom line, you get 25,000, okay, $440.48. Okay, and that's the answer. So all you have to do is just pop it into your calculator and you've got the answer. All right, now I hope that that's somewhat obvious. If you didn't know how to calculate GDP per capita, now hopefully you do. Okay, now the next one, and again, right, I always give more, and I want this video to be a revision of the theory as well as the math. Okay, so countries may calculate GDP using the output approach, the income approach, or the expenditure approach. Outline the difference between the expenditure approach and the income approach. Okay, what's the expenditure approach? Well, obviously I've gone crazy here and I've given way too much. So this you definitely need. The expenditure approach is the summation of spending, the addition of spending on domestically produced output in the economy. All different types of spending. Right, well, what's the different types of spending? It is the summation or the addition of consumption spending, investment spending, government spending, and net exports. Okay, and essentially I've written down the expenditure approach as C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Now, when an economy is in equilibrium, aggregate demand equals GDP, and it does. Okay, aggregate demand is essentially equal to aggregate supply. All right, whether it's long run aggregate supply or short run aggregate supply, depending on the time frame you're talking about. But that's where we're getting the expenditure approach equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay, now the income approach, on the other hand, the income approach is the summation of the incomes earned in the production of domestic output. Okay, so all you're doing is adding together all the different types of income. Well, what's the 4 different types of income? Well, the income approach equals, and we've already looked at this, the 4 payments to the factors of production, because who produces these goods and services? Only the factors of production. All right, so it's rent plus wages plus interest plus profit. And that's the answer to that question. So if you didn't know those definitions and you watch this again, now you do. Okay, so that's the whole point of everything that we're trying to do here. We're really just trying to make everything really obvious, simple, and helpful. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. Just go over, and if you don't know something, or if you can't remember something, watch the video again, or just cut to the part of the video that you can't remember. Okay, economists have suggested that it is important to calculate green GDP, okay? Outline the meaning of the term green GDP. And again, I've gone a little bit crazy and given a little bit extra. Green GDP focuses on the environmental cost of production by subtracting the cost of environmental damage or degradation from GDP. Then all you probably should write down is green GDP equals GDP minus environmental costs. All right, but basically what we're saying is it adjusts GDP for the cost of production on the environment. Yeah, like we can do that. Do you know what I mean? Like that's no problem. Now, the reason why I include questions twice is I want you to see what you need to know. So it says define the term expenditure approach. Now we've just done this. The expenditure approach, but I'll do it again. The expenditure approach is the summation of spending on domestically produced output in an economy. That's what it is. It's the summation of consumption spending, investment spending, government spending, and net exports. The expenditure approach equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay? So, like, I'm not trying to be annoying, which I'm sure I'm succeeding in the things that I'm not even trying to succeed at, but I'm not trying to be annoying. But what I am trying to do is show you how often these questions repeat, and then what I'm trying to do is see how easy it is to do well on this paper. And that's really important, guys. You should be really aiming for, like, full marks. Okay, now just to kind of show you here, this is where I'm going to be taking the figures. Okay, so Exports in 2009. Okay, so we've got, let's go. Consumption is 386. Investment is 205. Government expenditure is 89. Exports is 412. And imports is 334. That's in 2009. Okay. In 2010, consumption is 408. Investment is 223, I believe. Government expenditure is 93. Exports is 448 and imports is 356. Okay, so I am getting the numbers that I'm going to use now in a second from this table, right? That's the first thing I want to say, okay? Because I don't want to be flipping backwards and forwards and trying to keep this video under, I suppose, 3 days really. Okay, so the first thing here asks us, using the data in table 1, which is the one I've just referred to, calculate the nominal GDP in 2009 and in 2010 for the South Korean economy. Right. Well, the first thing I'm going to write down here is GDP 2009. It equals C plus I plus G plus X minus N. So C for 2009 was 386. I for 2009 was 205. G in 2009 was 89. X in 2009 was 412. And then we've got minus 334, which was the M. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take out my calculator. As you can see, it's seen better days. So it's 386 plus 205 plus 89 plus 412, minus 334, and I get an answer of 758. Okay, and what that equals, I'm just going to write GDP 2009 equals 758. Am I done? Again, of course not. I'm done. I have to write the currency symbol and the amounts that they're expressed in. Now, GDP 2010, well, surprise, surprise again, it's C plus I plus G plus X minus N. Done. Okay, so GDP 2010, where did they get these figures? I'll just flip over again. I got them from this table here in the 2010 column. Okay, so let me just gather my papers together. All right, GDP 2010 is 408 minus 223 plus 93. Okay, plus 448 minus 356. Okay, and again I'm going to take out my trusty calculator and I'm going to go here. So 408 plus 223 plus 93 plus 448 minus 356, and I get that as 816 million, and that is 816 billion, excuse me. So GDP 2010 equals 816 dollars and billion. Absolutely fantastic. Like, see how easy these questions are when you know what you're doing. And look what's happening here. Everything's repeating itself. Okay, so like all of this stuff is absolutely incredible. All right, now I'll keep this page with me so I can refer to it. All right, but for the next one, we've got using the GDP deflator, calculate real GDP for South Korea for, excuse me, I should take this out of the way, for 2009 and 2010. Right, now, the thing is here, the GDP deflator, all right, is actually given here in the question, so that's why I need to refer to it. So before anything, okay, nominal GDP for 2009 is 758 billion, and nominal GDP for 2010 is 816 billion, right? And if we look here, the GDP deflator for South Korea in 2009 is 97, and in 2010 it's 100. So because it's 100 in 2010, that means we're comparing all prices to this. So that means we already have real GDP, because when the base year is 100, when the index, either the GDP deflator or the CPI is 100, that means nominal GDP and real GDP are the same. So we don't even need to calculate real GDP. Now, just for completeness of, the thing, I will, but I'm just to show you that you don't. But I'm just going to say, so for 2009, where are we? Okay, so 2009, it was 758. Yeah, I'm looking at my page here, 758, and that is divided by 97. Now, where did I get that? That was the GDP deflator. I'll just show you. 758 is the billion, is the nominal GDP, and the GDP deflator in 2009 is 97. Okay, so just so you can see where the numbers are coming from, multiplied by 100 over 1, multiplied by 100 over 1, which equals 75800 divided by 97. And if you'll forgive me, I'm just going to round off, and I'm going to have to write small here. It's 781.44 billion. Sneak this in here. And again, am I done? No, I'm not. The old currency symbol there. Okay, now the next one is for 2010. Well, what we need to do is it's 816, it's nominal GDP, and I don't need to do this, but I just want you to see, multiplied by 100, right, over 1, and it's divided by 100. Where did I get the 100 from? I got it from here, because in 2010 it's 100. Again, you do not need to do this. I'm only showing you this so you can see that you don't, which equals 81600 over 100. Okay, and I'll even use the calculator, but you really don't need to do this. Okay, why am I doing this? 00 divided by 100, surprise, surprise, 816. And that's what we started with here. So real GDP 2010 equals 816. Am I done? No, I'm going to be that guy and write down billion, B-I-L-L-I-O-N. Okay, so that's just that. I mean, okay, so we've calculated real GDP for 2008 and 2009. Now, so the next logical question is, well, now that we've got real GDP, we can properly compare real growth rates, which is just increases in output. Well, how do we do this? Well, I'm going to have to refer back here, but do not forget, okay, real GDP in 2009 was 781.44 billion. Because the price level was lower, it's worth more. Okay, it's worth more compared to 2008 prices, all right, and then real GDP in 2010 prices, and real GDP in 2010 is 816 billion. Okay, well, how do we calculate real GDP growth? Well, I'll just say the next one says calculate the real economic growth rate for the South Korean economy from 2009 to 2010. So what it is, it's the real GDP in the second year minus the real GDP in the first year. Now, if you want to be really pedantic about it, it's real GDP in period 2 minus real GDP in period 1 divided by real GDP in period 1 multiplied by 100 over 1. Okay, so what we've got here is it's 816 minus, and I'm going to write small now, 78144. Those are the answers to the previous questions. Over 781.44 multiplied by 100 over 1. I have a sneaking suspicion I'm going to run out of space here. Okay, and that equals 34.56 multiplied by 100 over 1 over 781.44, and that's over 1. Okay, and what that then equals is 3456, just moving the decimal point 2 places, divided by 781.44, and what that actually equals as a percentage, rounded to 2 decimal places, is 4.42%. Okay, and there's our answer there. All right, so again, I mean, it's just repetition, and it's just relatively easy, right? Now, what this says is describe the relative growth rate performance of the South Korean economy in 2010 compared with OECD countries. Well, the first question is, what is the OECD? Well, it's not actually important. It's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Okay. Now, how would we possibly know what the average rate is for OECD countries? Well, it tells us in the question, the average growth rate of OECD2 economies in 2010 is 2.9%. Now, what did we find in our answer? Well, we found that South Korea grew by 4.42. Now, lads, for questions like this, you have to refer to the data. You have to refer to the data. So what we can see is the South Korean economy is growing faster in 2010 than the OECD average. The South Korean growth performance of 4.42% is higher than the 2.9% average growth rate of the OECD countries. Now, like, guys, like, you know, you're smart guys, like, you're able to do this. So, like, you know, that's simple. All I'm saying is refer to the data in your answers. Now, last but not least, okay, outline one possible reason for the high level of investment in South Korea. And the one that I've gone for is lower interest rates. I'm going to say, because business confidence is probably the most important, but lower interest rates is the the easiest to kind of factually describe. Okay, so lower interest rates reduce the cost of borrowing for firms, if you can read that horrible bit of writing. This induces them to borrow more money in order to purchase more capital. As now, due to lower interest rates, more investment projects, my God, my writing, are profitable. Okay, that's all you need to write down. And guys, we're done. That's the end of it. Finished. Okay, I really hope this helps. Watch it as many times as you need to in order to become perfect at it. And thanks very much.